Welcome to the Life in Norway show. The Norwegian fjords are Norway's #1 tourist attraction, with some of them even recognised by UNESCO for their unique natural and cultural value. Today I'm sharing a conversation from my recent visit to the Norwegian nature centre Hardanger in Eidfjord. It serves as a visitor centre for the Hardangervidda National Park and is a popular stop for anyone visiting the Hardangerfjord region. Victoria is the front desk manager of the nature centre. Originally from Berlin, Germany, Victoria was drawn to the Norwegian fjords from an early age and now calls the area her home. I began by asking her to explain how old the fjords are.
So the last ice age ended about 10,000 years ago. So that's when the glacier started melting down and the fjord started being created. The water started filling the area that had been scraped by the glacier. Today we can see in whole of Norway there are still glaciers left. So these are the last ones that are left from the last ice age that ended around 10,000 years ago.
I think a lot of people have heard that the fjords are created by glaciers, but maybe little more than that. So I asked Victoria to explain that process in a bit more detail.
Well, fjords are created by glaciers in general. The glacier at some point gets so heavy that it starts actually moving forward, and it takes with it scrapes along the landscape it moves through, if you will. So it takes with it all of the stones that are in the way, and that's why you get also these very smooth mountain walls alongside the fjords. And then when the glacier starts melting, when it gets warmer, as the ice age diminishes, glacier starts melting, and the melting water actually fills out all the area that the glacier has scraped out beforehand. So the fjord is basically the melted glacier that has filled the channel that was scraped out by the glacier through the mountains. So that's why the mountains actually go way deeper down than you can see today, because they go all the way below the water surface, because that's where the glacier has scraped out the channel or the landscape.
I get a lot of questions from people about how best to see the fjords. Many want to take a cruise ship, but that's not the only way. As Victoria works within the local tourism industry, I asked for her recommendations on how best to see the fjord region.
The cruise boats, what they do is that many of them go inside the fjord, so they come from the open sea and they go into the fjord and go all the way in the end of the fjord, which is where, for example, Eidfjord lies, so people really can see the hugeness and the broadness of the fjords. And I hear a lot of comments from the tourists that they are so fascinated by the majestic of the fjords and the mountains, and that everything is so huge, and they're very impressed by it. So it's a very special. I think it's a very special experience if you go take a boat all the way into the fjord, because you realize, okay, this is not just like a river or a canal or a lake, but this is actually another type of body of water that you don't find everywhere. So I think that's a very nice experience for a lot of people when they take, for example, a cruise boat. And then on land, what many do is that, for example, if they come to Eidfjord, they have experienced the fjord, and they come here and they come, for example, to the nature center. They can learn about how the fjord was created, which gives them an even better understanding, and they're even more in awe of what they've seen, because they now understand the process behind it. And then, for example, they take a tour up to Vøringsfossen. Norway is very famous for its waterfalls, and Vøringsfossen is one of the most popular ones because it's so long and you can see all the way down into the canyon. So I think that's a very nice way to experience some very specific Norwegian nature, that you have the fjord and then you have this waterfall which is on top of a mountain plateau, and you see the height difference, and you see all these huge, majestic differences and creations.
The fjord landscapes are fantastic, with old farms clinging to the mountainsides and slender waterfalls, just some of the highlights. But it's well worth keeping an eye out for some of the bird life and other animals that call the fjords their home.
You can see, for example, the sea eagles quite a lot around the fjord here, and you have the seabirds, seagulls. You have them a lot in Eidfjord as well. Otherwise, of course, fish is a very big thing around Eidfjord. You have salmon in the river. They live in the river. You have even sometimes in the fjord, all the way in the fjord here in Hardangerfjord, the orcas come in. That actually happened both last year and this year, that they come quite far into the fjord, and you can see them here. And that's on their travels to their summer stay.
Like almost all other countries, Norway's population is rapidly urbanizing, but many people do still live in rural areas. Eidfjord is a great example of a small Norwegian fjord community.
So Eidfjord is part of the Hardanger region, which is along the Hardangerfjord. The Hardanger region is called Norway's fruit basket because we grow most of the fruit here, especially apples, but also cherries and pears. And you have, in recent years, cider has become a very big thing. There are a lot of cider farms along the fjord. And the farmers on these apple farms, they have become very good experts and very well respected experts in producing the cider, making it one more typical Norwegian thing to experience. Eidfjord is all the way in the end of Hardangerfjord. That's where we are located. It's a tiny community. It's only 900 people living here throughout the year, but the area is quite big because Eidfjord Kommune is down on the fjord, and then it's also up on the Hardangervidda mountain plateau with all the cabins that are around Vøringfossen and Sysendalen. So it's quite a big area, but it's only 900 people living here, and I think it's one of the richest communities of the whole of Norway, and that is because we have the Sima Kraftverk, which is a water power station. I think the biggest employer in Eidfjord is actually the community itself. There are lots of people working with lots of different things, both administrative and services for the people who live here. Even though Eidfjord is a very small community, they have a lot of offers and taking care really well of the people who live here. Both, like for the old people, for the children, there are lots of cultural offers, and that's actually quite surprising when you first come to a tiny place like that. You wouldn't maybe expect that, but they have a really nice socially active community here. So the Norwegian Nature Center has actually been here since 1995. It was opened by Queen Sonja. She loves to hike in Hardanger, so it was very nice that we got her to open the center. At first, the focus was mainly on Hardangervidda, on the mountain plateau, since we are also the visitor center, one of the 2 visitor centers for the national park. But in 2018, we changed the name to Norwegian Nature Center, Norsk Natursenter. And we also changed the content of the exhibitions and broadened the focus to generally Norwegian nature. We still have, of course, a part about Hardangervidda, since we're still the visitor center. But we offer an experience center about Norwegian nature, climate and environment. And one of the highlights is the panoramic film that was produced by Ivo Caprino. And that film is actually a helicopter ride over the whole Hardanger area, which is a very unique and fascinating way to see this whole area before you get to know how it was created, what are the processes behind the beautiful nature that you can see, and what kind of populations are living here, both animal and plants, and how people actually were able to live and settle in this area for such a long time.
Like many foreigners who end up moving to Norway, Victoria's fascination with Norway began at a young age.
Well, my connection with Norway started quite some years back when I was 14 years old. That was when I was on my first trip to Norway, like a family vacation, and I remember like in the evening sitting down by the fjord, looking out over the water and the mountains and being totally fascinated. I mean, I grew up in Berlin, so this was something completely different, and I remember being very fascinated by it. And so, I made some friends on the trip here, and so the connection kind of stayed, and then I started to visit a lot. And when I was done with school, I actually was in Bergen as an au pair for a year, taking care of a little girl there, and getting to know Norway even better and getting to know Bergen better. I really liked the city because it's of course much smaller than Berlin, but what I especially liked was the combination of you have the cultural things and you have the city life, but you also have the nature. You can, from the city center in Bergen, you can go up to the mountains or you can go out to the fjords. That's what I really, really liked. And so I started studying actually Scandinavian area studies, and I took an exchange year in Bergen again, and started working in Norway every summer. So it was I was kind of working towards getting here permanently, because I noticed that I really liked the time I spent here, and I always was a little bit sad to go back to to Germany. And so I found, I started in the Norwegian Nature Center as a season worker. So I worked here for a few summers, and then the opportunity of a permanent position was available. And I had known Eidfjord for a few years, for a few summers at least, so I kind of knew what I was going to. That's why I accepted the position and moved permanently to Norway and to Eidfjord.
Of course, I finished up by asking Victoria the same 3 questions I ask every guest on the Life in Norway show.
Favorite thing about Norway, definitely the nature. I love going on mountain tours, and I enjoy that so much, and I get so happy when I do that. So that's definitely one of my favorite things, at least. One of the most challenging things, bompenger. Like the toll that you have to pay for crossing certain roads or bridges. The Hardanger Bridge that connects or that goes over the Hardanger Fjord. So when you live in Eidfjord, you want to go to Voss or to Bergen, you need to pass that one. And I always think very carefully about if I really need to do that trip or not. And the third one was my favorite spot. I think right now it must be Treåsen. That is a mountain farm here in Eidfjord. There is a trail going up there. It's a short but advanced trail. It's quite steep, but I really like it. For me, it's really fun, and so I use it as my training trip, and I really love the view from up there.
You can find out more about today's show, including links to information about Eidfjord, the fjord region in general, and the Norwegian Nature Centre Hardanger on the show notes page. Head on over to lifeinnorway.net/podcast and look for episode 55.